Alright, hey all. So, what I want to do in this one is I want to continue on with the style sheet that we have here in the style.css file. So, we have all these styles here for the actual HTML component. Now, let me just show you if I just try to copy and paste these. So, let's cut and paste. Let's take out this style tag and save. If I put this directly in the CSS file, now let's create a new thing. Let's call it athlete component CSS. And we'll paste this, and obviously it's going to have the double bracket like it did before, so let's just try to format this a little bit so we can take out the double brackets from all these. And as you can see, when we start doing those, the editor will start recognizing like the actual colors and stuff like that that we saw before. And one more. Okay. So if we save that and then rerun this here. Okay, we'll see that none of the styles will get applied here. It'll all just be black text. This is kind of like what it was before. So the reason for this, if you're familiar with Chrome DevTools, you can right click in Google Chrome and press inspect here to bring up the actual DevTools. So if we go into, yeah, see, so this is an iframe. So an iframe is, it's like a separate web page that you're putting into the web page. So for that reason, it doesn't have access to the styles.css, the style.css file that we created earlier, like these components, like other components do up here. Okay, so what we need to do for that then, close this out, and let me bring this back up, is so we'll need to, essentially this HTML is just on its own right now, so we will have to kind of do that same thing to put the styles back in again that we had before. And so the handy way to do this is up here when we're in the context manager, when we're opening the style.css file, we're just outputting all the styles right here, right? So if instead what we do is we make a variable, say CSS content, spelled that wrong, and have that be equal to f.read to read the actual file, right? Then what we can do here is we can tab this out, and instead of saying f.read, because we don't have access to f anymore, but we can say CSS content, okay, then this becomes a reusable variable for us. So what that means is what we can do down here in the component is we can open up a style tag again. Let's close that automatically too. And now we have access to the variable. So we can just say CSS content. So if we save that and go back here, refresh the whole page. Again, since we have the style.css file, now we have all these styles back here. Okay, so that was just kind of a neat little hack of a way to do it. This is kind of the full-fledged solution that you'll see suggested in a lot of the Streamlit community, is to set this equal to a variable. Alright, so the next thing that I want to show you here is if you take a look at the actual plot here, this doesn't actually have the font that we assigned to it, and we can tell that. I have to actually look at this too to be able to see, because I can't really tell fonts with my eye that well. But this does have, this is the finished product, and this does have like a different font here than this. So the way that we go about getting that set up is, it's because Plotly handles things a little bit differently. They actually pre-render all of this. So if we do a quick page inspect again, we can see that it actually renders in SVG, which is kind of like just an image. It's all pre-compiled. And that's kind of how it applies to everything. So in order to get our fonts applied here, what we have to actually do is, I have the plots pulled up here, is this can accept a font parameter. So font equals dictionary, and then let me pull up my notes here, and then you just say family. Did not spell that right. Why can I not spell words? And then let's just copy and paste the name of the actual font, because I'm definitely going to forget that too. Get that wrong. So if we go back to plot here. Oops. I guess that already had quotes attached to it. Okay. So if we do that, and then we also want to do, we have another parameter here for the actual title specifically. So we can say title font equals, and then that is another dictionary. And that'll just have the same font attached to it. Okay, and then we'll just copy this, and we should have another update layout that we're doing. Yep, right here. That's on the actual distribution, it looks like. So save that file, and then if we pull up the CrossFit data again, always rerun. Okay, and now you can see that the font is exactly what we want. But there is kind of a catch here. This now puts us in a position where we have to, if we just do like a find and replace on this, we've specified it 4 different times. So the obvious solution to that is just to, let's just copy that and then put that in a our constants.py, and then we'll make a new font here, or a new variable, I mean, well, constant, I guess. Once again, spelled it wrong. Make sure you spell it wrong too. Font family equals, and set that equal to the string, and in the actual plot here, are we importing constants? No, we are not. So we want to import constants from utils. And then So everywhere this is specified, what we can now say is constant dot and font family. And then could probably just do a find and replace, honestly, right? Let's see. Ah, that's gonna have the string attached to it though. Ugh. That's why find and replace isn't always the best solution. You often overlook these little things that you wouldn't do with manually copy pasting. Okay. So we've got that. So that makes our code a little bit cleaner. So if we pull it up again and then just it already refreshed. So okay. So we're seeing everything the same, which is great. That's what we want. Now, the only other problem is now we're kind of in a position, right, where we don't want to ever have to manually specify this. We want to just use, oops, why is that? It should detect in the CSS file. Oh, that's because of the quotes in here. So we have this manually specified again. So we'd like to be in a position where we can just set this equal to whatever the constant is, and that puts us in a position where if we decide, you know what, I don't like this font, I want to put in something else. I want to put in like Roboto font or Wingdings, if that's even still a thing. And because this is a CSS file now, it can't read Python. So what we can do for that though is there is a way to handle that. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, we'll use the helpers file right here. And we can use what are called CSS variables. So CSS variables got introduced in probably like, I don't know, 2018 or something like that. And so that is basically where in the CSS file you can specify things like what the font is going to be, what the color is going to be, all that kind of stuff. And then you can just reference these variables down here. Now, that still doesn't solve our problem of being able to do it from Python. But we can do that if we inject those variables by using Python, which we can do. I'll show you how to do that. So we'll make a new function here. We'll call it generate CSS. And so this is, let me just go to my notes. Yeah, it's just going to basically return a string. And this is going to be a giant F string like we've had before. And this will actually specify the CSS variables that we want. So we want to use, I forget what this thing is called, put in the colon first, but if we do colon root, that, I'll find a correction for that later, I guess, but that injects it into everything that reads CSS. So if we open up double brackets again like we did before, and then, so this is how you specify a CSS variable, is you start with a double dash like this. So we can have one, we can say font family, and then this will be equal to, this is a giant F string now, right? So we can interpolate this and say constants dot font family like this. Okay, And that's pretty much all that we need to do on that. So what we can do now is if we go back to main.py, let's see, I'm just trying to think, how do we want to do this? We'll make a variable called CSS vars, for lack of a better term, because I want to use this elsewhere too. And then this is going to be equal to helpers dot generate CSS. And then, so now we have that big CSS string that inserts the CSS variable that we want. So now we can make another, in the same markdown widget that we have, where we specified the CSS content, we can also specify the actual CSS variables. So in style now, in order to actually use the variable, what we want to do is dash var is how we use a variable. I believe, let me double check on that. Oh, no, sorry. It's just var like this. And then you open and close. And now what we want to do is use the name of the variable, which we denoted with the double dash. So we just say font family like this. So if all goes correctly, we save both of these. And then if we bring up our app again, everything should still apply, which it does. Great. Okay. The only place it doesn't apply then is with the actual component that we have. And that's because our component doesn't actually let me just double check that just to show you. Yeah, so you can see the font is slightly different and it doesn't apply to this component. And that's because in our component we're not generating the actual CSS variables. So what we want to do for that is simply now, because we have the CSS variables stored in this CSS vars here, we can go down to the actual component and we can put in CSS vars into here and then save that, bring it back up, and okay. So we can see we have the actual, let me just inspect element here. Okay, yeah, so it is getting the correct font family. Like I said, I'm not the best at detecting fonts. Okay, everything looks to be having the font. Great. Alright, so the last thing that I want to do here is I just want to test everything to make sure it's all working, because like I said before, I'm not the best at detecting fonts, so I mean, for all I know, I could have given you wrong information here. So let's just make sure. So if we expand this, let's do wingdings. And at the same time, we can see if wingdings is still a thing. So if we save that, oh my gosh, okay. So it does work by changing everything to wingdings. Well, I guess there are some things here that didn't quite apply to, but that's okay. It did apply to most things. Oh, that's interesting. How it has folders down here. That's strange since it's the numbers. All right, let's enough fooling around. Let's change it back to what it was. And it reruns and okay, great. So it looks like we have everything working correctly. So thank you for watching.